Yesterday, Alberta Premier Danielle Smith and her UCP government brought down the throne speech, signaling the start of another legislative session. I'm going to talk to Professor Duane Bratt, political scientist from Mount Royal University, about it. So, welcome to the interview, Duane.
Good morning, Mark.
This throne speech was chock full of references to energy. What really stood out for you?
Basically, it was the Smith government taking a victory lap. They're arguing that there has been a sea change in Canadian public opinion towards Alberta's oil and gas sector and the importance of diversifying to other markets away from the US and building pipelines. And that was solely due to the efforts of Danielle Smith. This ignores the fact that what Danielle Smith was doing was exactly what Jason Kenney was doing and Rachel Notley was doing and every other premier in Alberta for decades. So you either have to think that it was the persuasive power and diplomatic efforts of Smith that changed Canadian public opinion, and there has been a substantial change in Canadian public opinion, or whether there was another variable at play here. The
And
other variable, of course, is Donald Trump. That is what has led to the sea change. It was not due to the efforts of Danielle Smith. She highlights her 2023 throne speech and said, "We promised we would do this. We succeeded, and it's because of us." No, it's because of Donald Trump.
I'd like to put a little wrinkle on that, Duane, because I would argue that while that's true, can't underestimate the impact of Donald Trump. She had the right message at the right time, and she promoted it tirelessly.
Oh,
She,
there is no doubt about that. And whether she used the old Quebec expression "knife at the throat" by encouraging separatism, there was a difference. But I mean, Jason Kenney used fair deal panels, and he did some of the same things, although Smith has taken it to a different level.
yeah, fair enough. And just for the record, viewers, while we can acknowledge this at Energy Media, we don't agree with it because we think that she is ignoring the energy transition and the electrification of the global economy. So I had to say that as a disclaimer.
Yeah.
Duane, what about some of
But
this other?
there's a lot more in there. So she often uses the word energy to mean exclusively oil. So there's a reference in there about making a deal with Ontario because Ontario and Quebec's entire energy is dependent on Line 5. That is incorrect because energy means a lot more than just oil. It means electricity, and their electricity does not go through Line 5. More importantly, Quebec in particular gets a lot more oil than just Line 5. And she doesn't reference why Line 5 is a problem. We've had Line 5 for decades and decades and decades. It's a problem now because of Gretchen Whitmer, the Michigan governor. But more importantly, she now has a sort of pseudo ally, ironically, because Whitmore is a Democrat and a critic of Trump with Donald Trump, that he could be using that as leverage. So Smith is correct in highlighting that there is a danger around Line 5, but she exaggerates this. The entire province of Ontario and Quebec is not dependent on Alberta oil.
What stuck out for me is the clarity of the vision here. Double oil production, 5 pipelines going east, west, north, south, all over the place. And that it was reflected in the mandate letter to Energy Minister Brian Jean. It's not going to happen. It's just too large an expansion inside of a decade. And
it's a stretch goal. But it's also ironically consistent with the speech that Carney gave 2 days ago, where he talks about doubling Canadian exports away from the United States. And if you look at how the largest export is oil, that has to be one of them. So the only way you could do that is with a pipeline and increased expansion. So she doesn't say that because I think the speech was written, or the throne speech was written before Carney's speech. But there is, again, some alliance here between Mark Carney and Danielle Smith. Maybe not with the BC government, maybe not, definitely not with Indigenous people in British Columbia, but the Liberal government and the provincial government are in major alignment.
One of the things that I find is that it's like every second morning, a press release comes from the Alberta government, lands in my inbox, and it's about this minister or that MLA going down to the US, to a state or whatever, to strengthen energy ties. And we see that again, saw it in the throne speech. It's a big focus, building ties to US states to promote Alberta energy.
She goes further than that. She literally takes a victory lap in this throne speech. And I have to read this passage from it because I think it is important. As a result of this government's diplomatic victory with the United States, the vast majority of Alberta exports, from energy to agriculture and almost everything else, have remained tariff-free. So she is basically claiming that we've solved the issue of trade with the United States, and it has been solely due to Alberta, not to anything else. Now, yes, Alberta was an outlier. They refused to support different forms of retaliation, and I think Carney has come around to that. And obviously, this throne speech was given well before Donald Trump's temper tantrum last night that at least suspended, he called it terminated, trade negotiations. But the whole throne speech, and we're just focusing on energy here, is just chock full of this hyperbole that simply due to the efforts of Danielle Smith, there's just win after win after win everywhere.
What do you make of this commitment to natural gas to power AI data centers? That just seems to have emerged as a big issue for her.
Yeah, and it's, well, there's several things. One is what has hurt the Alberta economy for well over a decade is the lack of natural gas exports. That had been a major driver of the Alberta economy going back to the Klein days. And with the shale revolution in the United States, not only did they lose their U.S. customers, they also lost a lot of customers in central Canada because it was easier and cheaper to bring it in from Pennsylvania, for example, to Ontario. So we have an abundance of natural gas. And now she sees AI data centers as being a major use of that. We've already seen that with the getting rid of coal plants. They were able to get rid of coal plants, bring in natural gas. Now she sees AI as the future. AI does not produce a lot of jobs. In fact, AI data centers are going to lose jobs. More jobs are created in building energy plants to supply the data centers than the data centers themselves. And so she sees an opportunity for the use of natural gas there. We'll have to see. There's also a massive AI data center in the Peace region in northwest Alberta that's supposed to be powered by nuclear energy. I doubt that will occur because the lead times to build a nuclear power plant are so much longer than a natural gas plant. This is also tied into one of the other themes, is just the lack of any discussion about the environment or climate change at all in there. Ramping up natural gas production is going to put our emissions through the roof.
Let's wrap up the interview this way, Duane. What about this idea of the Heritage Savings Fund being modeled after the Norway and Saudi sovereign funds? What do you make of that?
Well, first, the Norwegian fund was modeled after the Alberta fund. And successive governments have always pledged that they would increase the Heritage Trust Fund. I do believe the Smith government has taken significant efforts in this. I think bringing in Stephen Harper, for example, to run it is an illustration of that. And they have stopped taking the interest out of there. That has been one of the major problems. If they just did that and stop pulling the interest out, we would be able to build that up. So this has been a something that parties on the left, parties in the center, parties on the right have always complained about. Smith is taking action on that front. I do wonder, we're looking at a very large budget deficit coming. There's going to be the possibility of dipping into that, just like every other government did. So is it worth running a $10-11 billion deficit so that you can increase the Heritage Trust Fund by a little bit? We'll have to see. That's going to be a major political battle that Smith is going to have.
Duane, as always, thank you very much for this.
Okay, you're welcome.